Here's a sort of a qualifier. This is because there is so many people, and I've covered this before. It's sort of like if you're a child, like I was, and I came in here in 1951. And I realized by age 4, when my circuits were up and running, my state of awareness was up. As soon as I read a newspaper, hey, I'm in an energy war, a spiritual war, okay? So I had the distinct advantage in knowing the difference between what I am and what I'm not, okay? That makes it easy that whenever I'm getting a communication signal, no matter how it comes to me, whether they can send a signal, I can experience it inside of me, which I realize here's a thought that I just had, and I know that, well, that's not a thought I would normally think of. Then I began to realize, because I know how this works, that I received a communication signal that was set to me by something that represents a demon, because it represents a signal. Now, I figure most people have at least a basic understanding of what a radio receiver is, or a stereo radio receiver is. Okay, I would think that most people have grown up around a transistor radio, or they have a radio in their car, or they have a television set. Okay, so you obviously realize that when you turn on a television set, all that is a box that's got a built-in antenna, and that somewhere else that is in another location is sending to us images that represent sound and light. Okay, and so we're now aware of what they're aware of, because their state of awareness is the ones that's communicating who they are to us. So that's a signal transmission. That's a communication signal that's sending us information. That's what information is. Information is a signal that's being transmitted to us. Our antennas pick it up, okay? Now we're aware of it, and then what it is that they're communicating to us, we translate. Now, I don't know of any other more simpler way to translate the cosmos than to understand how signals intelligence work, okay? If you need a refresher course on that, you can download a free manual put out by the United States Army Signal Corps. As a matter of fact, it's one of the greatest sources of information to understand how electromagnetic energy works on the planet, okay? And with signals transmission. I mean, if you ever studied military history, and I studied it intensely, I put an enormous amount of energy, time and energy in geospace time, right? Studying military technology, military weapons application, command structures, how they think, how they do things, particularly the Germans, particularly Americans, particularly the Brits, particularly the France, all of the great, if you will, military powers that go all the way back through their own history. I began looking at the evolution of their weapons, their technology, and how they apply them against others to control more of what energy is, because all there is energy and consciousness, right? Your state of awareness, what you're aware of, right? So what we're aware of is based on an energy spectrum, pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. So if you're experiencing a state of love and joy, no matter where you go, that experience is being recorded in your DNA. So we have a record that we keep here of ourselves for the time that we've spent here that goes on the Akashic record. Okay? Of course, Dolores Cannon has a very unique way of being able to go through what's called regressive hypnotherapy, which means accessing all your previous memories of past lives, okay, of things that you've done and experienced. The purpose of the coursework in the classroom, as Patty Broussard will explain to you, and I've known this just through my own experience, and that is that if you have an enormous thirst to learn and have a great passion to want to learn new things, then it means that you have a passion to learn and experience something that you've never experienced before. Which means we have an intense love, because we can measure love on the electromagnetic frequency spectrum, which is 528, when you are experiencing a high-speed wave, because you can't wait to learn something that you have not ever experienced before, then you realize you have an enormous excuse me, amount of passion, or fire, if you will, in learning. Which means the last thing in the world that we think about is fearing the unknown of something that we have not experienced yet. Instead, we have an enormous amount of fire in us that can't wait to experience what the universe has to show us that comes next. And when you really break it all down, that's really what it is. It's learning. That's why it's a classroom. And it's an unbelievable classroom to learn in, particularly when you're spending all your time with her. Okay? Because nature really is the teacher. So when you're out there in nature, it means you're picking up the communication signal transfer, the transfer of her signal. That when you're in nature, you're experiencing the signal communication that's coming from the great living spirit of Mother Earth. Now you're experiencing her communication with your antenna. So I happen to love being with her, so I love to experience the signal communication that comes from her when I'm with her. Because imagine everything that she has to teach you because of how old she is. Imagine being able to experience everything that she's learned. Now, I don't know about you, but those are the kind of teachers that I love to learn from because they've been around for a long, long, long time. Remember I once mentioned one time about how about learning from her mother, and then her mother's mother, and then her mother's mother, and on and on and on, and then their father. Which means, my God, imagine learning from all those gods and all those goddesses, those powerful spirits. Imagine what they've all experienced that are different from each other. Wow. Then imagine how many beings, gazillion beings, there are that are out there in the cosmos that we have to learn from that we haven't experienced yet. So when we are experiencing the cosmos with such an enormous amount of fire in our soul, with such an enormous amount of passion that we have for everything in the cosmos that we haven't experienced yet, and we can't wait to experience what comes new, then it means that we love the unknown. Okay? Because we know that whatever it is going to be just as beautiful as the last experience we learned from. That's where the creative imagination is coupled to the love that we have for the cosmos that we experience that goes on forever. Okay? So that's what I do. I translate who I am and how I experience the cosmos through me with you. So I am simply one communicator, one transmitter of information, of knowledge that I've learned throughout the coursework of my own soul's journey. That's it. So when I think about other beings who are imparting information about the energy that they use to experience who they are, that they are expressing and explaining things to us, I simply listen to that and hear that in a way that tells me that's who they are. That's what they know. That's the information that they're sharing, who they are. But I also understand at the end of the day, I came into my biological mother's womb all by myself, and I'm going to leave this realm all by myself, even though I'm not alone. So it is the experiences that I have here, that we all have here, that represent our journey. So I don't know about you, but I love to experience the universe running at the highest possible speed. And I figured as a child, being a student in the cosmos, that the best way to learn how to do that is through something that is a great living spirit in the planet that is running at a high rate of speed to where she can push magma up out of the ocean floor and provide a rock in which it's giving life to thrive from. That's a girl I want to learn from. Okay? That's why I spent all my time in nature. Now, how everybody else chooses to experience who they are in their journey is up to them. That's universal free will, isn't it? So that's why I always figured that it's sort of up to everybody to believe in whatever they want to believe in. You want to believe in a boogeyman? That's up to you. You want to spend your mind and your energy experiencing things that are the boogeyman and goblins and demons and vampires and live in a hell room? That's up to you folks. I don't have any choice over what you choose to experience. I got my own universe that I live in, which is what love is. I love to hang out with flowers. I love to hang out with trees. I love to hang out with grass. I love to hang out with things that are living, vibrating at a high rate of speed. Because, man, that energy feels good when I'm in the middle of a forest, in the middle of a jungle, around a tree that goes up so high I can't even see the top of what it can see. That's what it means to know your living spirit experiencing all the living energies that are in nature, because they're vibrating at such a high rate of speed that our energies are in waveform alignment with the high-speed waves that are in nature. That's how we know what it's like to be in peace, harmony, and balance, and being native to the girl in the planet and being native to the waves that are in harmony in nature. So I say this because sometimes we get caught up with a lot of the, what I call word traps. Because for me, it's a bit late to revisit a chemistry course when you get into exothermic and endothermic and the basic fundamentals of how fire works, of tetrahedron, what a periodic table is, the weight of a particle, mass spectrometry. Because what I know is what I've always said from the beginning, is that the girl in the planet took the gloves off, and the events that are happening now are going to accelerate at a rate of speed because we are going from one to the next, which means the purging that is taking place on the planet right now is to clear the planet of its parasites. It's no different, like I said before, about doing a colon cleanse. And when we have consumed all of those things that represent energy that come through all the corporate parasitic consciousness stores, from which we now put that in our body, those things are therefore, as artificial intelligence, get written into our memory. When those parasites are in our body, that means that when we have a future proofs past signal transmission of communication, it means that the parasite that is artificial intelligence that is in our body, that has been logged into our memory, says to our conscious mind, feed me. I want that energy, that frequency, and that experience again. Now the body has to detoxify itself or use its energy to transmute and then push out the data, the metadata. So all the metadata, which is the data input to a terminal, which is the transmitter station, means that we are picking up signals when we put information into our mouth, which ends up in our stomach. That represents frequencies, which represent energy, which represent data. If that data is toxic and it's artificial intelligence, then it means it's not living energy. That means that the living energy that is in our body is going to have to break it down into its least common denominator, and we push it out through perspiring, which is the perspiration, which is the sweat, or it comes out of the orifices that are in our body, which means we are emitting toxic waste products as a result of toxic input. And that's how it works. You have parasites that represent corporations that produce toxic stuff, in which we now have to use our living energies to break it down into metadata that gets pushed out. So we're back to the input side of the signal communication and to the output side of the signal communication that goes outside, because you cannot create or destroy energy. We simply experience the data, which is the data input and the data output. Toxic data in, toxic waste stream out. Thus, the toxic waste stream communicates itself back to us, thus further degrades our DNA. That's how it works. It's a circular system. It's a feedback loop. It's a biological feedback loop that is designed to keep us stuck in a time loop. How does it keep us stuck in a time loop? By choosing to have a relationship with artificial intelligence that is parasitic. Those are all your corporations. Okay. They don't represent 0 point, do they? So they're not 0 point energy. They don't represent living energies. That's why they're a corporation. That's why they wear black robes. Black robes mean they represent the dark side, which is the 7 seconds of darkness, to allow more demons to come in here to feed off the light. So that's what they do, because they can't generate any love, can they? No. So those are your parasites. So they feed on us, and the way that they feed on us is by continuing to run their corporations that do so. Because it's in their own bylaws and statutes, it says, hey, we can't maintain the doors open and provide jobs for everybody unless we're parasiting off of everybody. So you have beings that go to work for parasites in order to maintain a parasitic system that maintains a time loop in which the Merkaba, instead of going faster, is going in reverse. Because you're spending all of your energy trying to detoxify something that we put into our body as a result of all the toxic stuff that they sell to us that keeps them in business. And people that have jobs that are in parasitic corporations in order to keep making the money, in order to keep a time loop active. So how is anybody going to spin their Merkaba at a high rate of speed if they're spending all their energy detoxifying themselves? That's the problem. So that's why she took the gloves off, to say, I'm going to decolonize this planet. She's going to decolonize herself. So she's purging herself of all the parasites that have been feeding on the light, because when Patty said that her shield was down by 25%, imagine that your Merkaba and your own magnetic shield was down by 25% because of all the parasites we have in our body as a result of all these corporations. No different. It's simply the difference in a scalar measurement between your physical body, of all the toxic metadata you got to put out by all the toxic data that we put in. So you can imagine all the toxic data that's in her that she's got to kick out. So she's wanting to restore her shield by restoring the light, which is getting rid of all the parasites that are not only feeding on us, but they're feeding on her. That's the nature of the war. So they went to war against the goddess to pillage and plunder the girl on the planet, which is no different than raping a girl down the street. That's as simple as it gets. So this is why when I think about being on the male side, the males, at least when I grew up in America, are supposed to be protecting what a girl is. Nowadays, when you walk across the streets of America, I remember walking up to a girl and said, wow, you got a new boyfriend. That's a measurement, isn't it? It used to be walking across America on any public street, you could almost see most young men that were in high school up through their 20s and 30s. Usually by that time they were married and had a family. But most young men and young women you could see walking down the street where you could see them in a state of love and joy. They were happy with each other, holding each other's hands. That used to be a very typical scene walking down Main Street on any typical street in any village, any town across America. You don't see that anymore. I'm old enough to remember that in America in the 1950s and 1960s where a lot more people were showing a lot more love towards each other, particularly between boys and girls. Okay? As a matter of fact, it is extremely painful, and this is sort of a measurement of how bad it got. But imagine, for example, when you see, when I go to parks, for example, because I love to be around the higher frequency energy of children that are free to express themselves and having an enormous amount of fun with their mothers, right? Well, see, it used to be 30 years ago, you could show a smile and a happy face to say hi to little girls and their mothers, right? You don't do that now. You want to know why? Fear. Fear. Living in fear of showing other children that may not be your children how much you love them for who they are. You don't dare show that kind of love and compassion that you have for other children, or they're going to think you're a pedophile and an abuser. Think about that. That's how bad it is. Now you got children and mothers wearing masks. That's a measurement of how bad it got here, of how many people live in fear of each other. So they programmed to put that fear in your unconscious memory. And as long as you have fear of showing love towards children, no matter who you are as a human, when you have fear of showing somebody else love, no matter who they are, how will you ever expect to graduate out of here? That means a spinning or Merkaba. It means that somebody that is wanting to show love to other children and other parents have to isolate themselves away from beings like that because you realize the threat that they represent to you. Because if you dared show any of them love, they would think that you're a predator or a pedophile. So this means a separation between an enormous amount of people that need healing and have to get rid of all that fear-based programming as a result of what happened here. That's why what I experienced here just over the 70 years I've been here is a tragedy. It's a horror show on a level I find it almost impossible to believe that it was even possible to experience. But if you go back 40 years in America, when adults, both males and females, were showing so much love towards each other and towards other children, it was an accepted norm. Now they don't do that anymore because they all live in fear of each other, of what you might be as a predator. Because they realize that those predators, those demons that looked human, were wearing masks to look human. Now they don't know who's real and who ain't anymore. Because they live in such a state of fear instead of a state of love. Anyway, I love you all. I know that we're headed in the right direction. Healing is going to take place, and it's one of the reasons why the importance of sort of coming to grips, humanity coming to grips with itself, to understand how this really happened. And I've always thought that that at some point when we reach sort of a more equalization between the energies across the planet where more healing is taking place, people have sort of woken up to the fact of what happened, when they can start loving each other again the way that they did in far greater numbers that they used to compared to the last two generations, that healing will dissolve those memories and begin to feel an enormous amount of love back in their heart, to start showing each other more love, peace, and harmony throughout all families, in all communities, in all neighborhoods, as I used to experience it on a far greater level than what we experience it now. Anyway, that's the good news I feel in my heart. And enjoy the day. Have a great day.